Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. I haven't done one of these in a long time. So it is Flower It Up Friday. Now I think Flower It Up has transitioned to other days of the week. So I'm just going to say Flower It Up. What can you do with flour? This is something that was started at Martin's Midlife Misadventures with Ashley and Amy. And I haven't done it in a while because life happened, but I'm trying to get back into a routine of things, and this is something that I haven't showed. So since it is soup season and we are in frigid temperatures here, we are at like -4 and 9 degrees at night, I thought I would make a beet pot of soup and put some freshly baked rolls with it, and that's what I'm going to be making today. It's actually potato bread, but I'm going to make it into a roll and hopefully it will be just as good. So this recipe comes straight out of the book that came with my bread maker. That's what I'm going to be using today. I have my potato flakes. This is going to be sweet potato rolls. So I have my sweet potato flakes. I have my bread flour here. I have my salt. And I have my sugar. Sometimes I use honey, but I'm using sugar today. My dry milk. My yeast. I put this in the fridge or the freezer until I'm ready to use it, and I haven't had any problems. I have my water here and my butter. And like I said, I'm going to be using my bread maker today. It's going to be easy while I'm at the kitchen stove making soup. So I'm going to use the dough function because I don't want to bake this in my bread maker, but it works just as great. So let's get these rolls started. The first thing I'm going to put in is my warm water. Now it's a little bit warmer than I would normally use because my kitchen is cold and I want to try and melt this butter a little bit before I put in the rest of the ingredients. Now the yeast will not go in this water until the flour is on top of it. With my bread maker, it actually says to make a well in the top of the flour and put the yeast in last. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to just let this butter melt a little bit. So now that my butter's melted, I'm going to start in with the rest of my ingredients. And this is the salt. So there's no risk of deactivating the yeast because the yeast and salt is way away from each other. So in goes my salt. And then I'm going to add my bread flour. And you can also use all-purpose flour. I've used both of them and haven't seen any real differences. So if you have all-purpose flour, then use that. I'm using bread flour today. And if it's what you have, then use it. Now, with the bread flour, I want to make sure I cover all that liquid. So see how it's seeping out around the side there? I want to make sure I cover that so it doesn't come in contact with the yeast until it's ready to be mixed in. So I'm making that sort of well in the middle with my flour, and I'm going to put all the rest of my dry ingredients into that well as with my yeast. So now I'm putting in my sugar. Sometimes I use honey. If I was using honey, I would have put it right in with the water so it could dilute and be distributed throughout the whole loaf. So I'm putting in my sugar now. So I have noticed with these packets, especially flavored mashed potatoes, if I don't use the whole pack, then sometimes the heavier ingredients can sink to the bottom of the pack. So what I do is I put them in a mason jar and I shake them all around so the sweet potato part is mixed in with everything before I use it. And that's where I store the rest of my potato flakes in a container, like a jar, mason jar or whatever, and I just shake it up when I go to use it. And yes, this is quite old, but they are still good. I've tried them. So if I ain't making a mess, I ain't baking and I ain't cooking. So I had to take my little insert bin out, and now I'm putting it back into the bread maker and continuing with the rest of the ingredients. So now in goes the sweet potato flakes, and I did also put the dry milk powder right on top of that. I don't know if you noticed that, but I put them in together. So I'm just gonna make another well, which I should have I don't know why I did it first and then did it. But anyway, I'm going to make a well, and then I'm just going to put my yeast, because this is what my bread maker says to do. Put the yeast in a well at the very top. So it's the last ingredient to go in. So here is my yeast going in. And pretty much I'm done. The machine does the rest. So I'm going to set it to the dough function, which is 9. So I'm just going to set it to 9, and I'm not going to do anything else. I'm not going to worry about cross color or anything because I'm not going to actually bake it in here, and this is going to do everything for me. And then I just hit start. It's going to do the kneading, the rising, pretty much everything other than shaping and baking, which is what I will do. So I'm just going to leave it and let it do its thing for the next hour and a half. So do you remember those set it and forget it? I don't know what that was. Maybe in the 90s it was set it and forget it. Yeah, I think it was like a rotisserie chicken thing. I'm not exactly sure, but that's what this reminds me of. Put everything in and set it and forget it. So with my rolls, I do 2 rises before I take them out and shape them. So this is the first rise. I'm going to punch this down and I'm going to let it rise for another half an hour before I take it out and start shaping it. So this is the second rise. Now it's time to take it out, and I lightly knead it. I put it on a lightly floured surface, and I knead it for about 30 seconds, a minute, just to bring it together and make it nice and smooth. Once I take it out of the bin or the roll or the bowl or whatever I have, if I've done it in like my stand mixer, I'll just take it out and knead it for about 30 seconds to a minute just to bring it together before I start if I'm gonna do rolls, before I start pushing out rolls, or if I do a loaf, before I start shaping it into a loaf, I'll just knead it for these 30 seconds to a minute. Nothing, majorly kneading, just to bring it together. And once I do that, I will start shaping my rolls. So now that I have my dough bowl shaped, I'm going to get out my kitchen scale, because I've never done this in a roll form before. It's always a loaf. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure these, and I do go back. I measured the whole dough bowl, and then I just divide it out. Usually my rolls are about 2 ounces. And I know this is going to be more than 2 ounces because it's a 2-pound loaf, because I usually get 12 rolls out of my recipe. This is probably going to make about 14 or so, depending if you do 2 ounces or if you do, like I have done, 2.5 ounces, and I actually got 13 rolls out of that. So I've made the baker's dozen 13 rolls, and I'm just going to get to rolling them out. So I don't know if it's just my kitchen or what, I find if I leave my rolls out, they kind of get a little dry on the edges, the part that's exposed to the air. So I just cover them with a little bit of cling wrap that I'm going to actually cover my pan with later on while I'm rolling out that particular roll. So as I go along, I will actually transition this to my pan. So when I've got more than half in my pan, I'll put that plastic on the ones in my pan. So you can shape these rolls out to any way, shape, and form you want. I'm going to do sort of like a knot, and I'm going to roll these doughs out to about 12 to 14 inches long, so they can be wrapped around my hand and formed into a knot. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to make a little fancy roll. So I just tucked it over my hand, and I want to tuck smush the ends together and sort of tuck it under. So that's going to help in 2 ways. It's going to clean up the little knot that I'm making, as well as it's going to help the rolls to rise a little bit more. So here they are in my dish. I did butter my dish. I use butter. Some people use oil, but do whatever you like to do. Sometimes I use coconut oil. So again, I'm just showing you the process I do. I'm rolling them out, like I said, to about 12-14 inches, depending on how big or small you want your knot to be. So I'm taking it over my hand and just bringing one side through. And at that point, you could be done. So I probably rolled that out to about 12 inches. So this one I rolled out a little longer. It's going over my hand. I'm bringing one side through, and I want to put the 2 ends together, sort of meld them together, and then tuck it underneath. So that's the 2 knots I did. So now that I've got all my rolls formed, into the pan they go, and I'm going to cover them with the cling film, and I'm going to put them in a warm place, which is in my oven with the light on, to rise for 45 minutes. So my oven takes about 10 minutes to heat, to warm up. So here they are. They're about doubled in size. They got another 10 minutes to go. So I'm going to preheat my oven. And once my oven comes up to temp, it's probably going to be that 45 minutes is going to be up, and they're going to go into the oven. So I'm going to bake these on 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes. Depending on your oven will depend on how long you need to bake them for. My oven runs hot, so I'm going to err on the side of the lesser amount of time and check them. And if they need a few more minutes, then I'll let them go for a few more minutes. So about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how hot or cold your oven runs. So you know me, I wouldn't be cooking or baking if I didn't make a mess. And in goes my tablespoon. Yep, right in the flour. And also, I usually do this on the counter. Today I decided, I'm going to put the bin in the bread maker and pour everything in there to save time. Yeah, I didn't really save time. As you can see, I'm wiping out. It was flour on the heating element, and I actually did this before I started making the bread. If I left it, it would have just been a burnt scent, and it would be more cleanup in the end. So here are my dinner rolls out of the oven, and all I did was just brush the tops with a little bit of butter. And I will say these were delicious, as I knew they were because I've made them before. But on a cold night with a hot bowl of soup and a nice warm roll on the side, nothing beats that. It was delicious. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and hit that notification bell to be notified when I upload videos. God bless, and remember, stay safe and keep prepping.